Listen to the audiobook, A Study in Scarlet, a Sherlock Holmes story. By Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. By Oxford Reading University. Level B1.
Part 1.
In 1871, I graduated from medical school in London and was sent to serve in the Second Afghan War as an army surgeon. That campaign brought promotion and fame to many. To me, however, it only brought disaster. I was seriously injured in a battle and only survived thanks to the help of a brave colleague. My shoulder bone was destroyed, and I was going to deal with the consequences of that war for the rest of my life. Back in London, I rented a hotel room. I had quite a lot of money to waste, so I tried to live in style. However, it never brought me any happiness. One day I met Stamford, an old colleague. He told me that a friend of his was looking for a roommate. "He might seem slightly odd," Stamford warned me. "He is interested in all sorts of strange things and spends most of his time doing scientific experiments." I thought that a quiet roommate who was busy studying suited me perfectly. The following day we went to a chemical laboratory to meet the man. We found him in the room, carefully examining a test tube. As soon as Stamford came into his sight, the man hurried toward us, shouting, "I've found it, a substance that only reacts with blood and nothing else." He couldn't possibly be happier even if he had discovered a gold mine. "Do you understand that it's an incredibly practical medical and legal discovery?" he continued. "We will now be able to identify drops of blood without mistake." "Dr. John Watson, this is Sherlock Holmes," said Stamford. Holmes shook my hand with a strength that I hardly appreciated. "You've been to Afghanistan, I see," he commented. I was surprised, but Holmes gave me no explanation. He put a bandage over a cut on his finger and said with a smile, "I have to be careful. I deal with poisons a lot of the time." Stamford explained that I was looking for a roommate too. Holmes seemed very excited by the idea of sharing accommodation with me. He warned me about some of his habits that could make him an unpleasant roommate, though. Those included smoking, staying silent for days at a time, playing the violin, and doing chemical experiments. None of that sounded particularly horrible to me, and I agreed to visit his rooms the following day. Stamford and I headed back to my hotel. "By the way," I asked suddenly, "how did he know that I had been to Afghanistan?" Stamford smiled. "That's just his special ability," he said. "Many people have wanted to know how he finds things out, but to this day, it remains a mystery." 2. The next day, I examined the rooms at 221B Baker Street. The apartment was pleasant, and the price even more so. I decided to move in immediately. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. He was quiet and organized. He was rarely up after 10 at night and woke up much earlier than I did. Sometimes, when he was in the working mood, he spent his days in the laboratory or the dissecting room. Other times, he lay on the sofa for days on end, silent and still, and didn't want to be bothered. On such occasions, I noticed a strange expression on his face. I was growing more and more curious about his personality and aims in life. His knowledge of some subjects was really impressive. He knew every little thing about chemistry and poisons in particular, and he had an advanced knowledge of British law and the soils of London. However, he knew next to nothing about literature, politics, or philosophy. He didn't know that the earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around. When I told him that, he said, "I will try to forget it as soon as possible. I think the brain is like an empty room. If you store too many things there, then at one point you will simply run out of space. So it makes sense to only place things that you might need there. To be honest, I can't see how the way the solar system is organized can be useful to me." Holmes frequently had visitors of all social classes, ages, and genders. He called them his clients. I was too shy to ask him what his job was until one day he told me about it himself. I woke up earlier than usual that day. Holmes was finishing his breakfast. I picked up a newspaper. One article was marked with a pencil, so naturally, I started reading it. The author argued that anyone could learn a lot of things just by looking carefully at the world around them. The article was interesting, but some of the conclusions seemed rather silly to me. Surely one cannot look at a drop of water and define which ocean it came from. What a stupid article, I said, and showed it to Holmes. It's well written, sure, but it's hardly practical. What if I told you these theories are so practical that I earn money from them? Asked Holmes. I wrote this article, and the techniques I described in it are the basis of my job. I'm a consulting detective. I advise private and government detectives when they have trouble dealing with their tasks. I am perhaps the only person in the world who exercises this profession. Are all your clients detectives? I asked. No, I help people of all trades, he replied. I often solve their problems without even leaving the room. Still, I doubted his abilities. Someone must have told him I had been in Afghanistan. I asked him to explain his logic. You look like a gentleman of the medical type, but you stand straight like a soldier. Your skin is darker than it would naturally be, so you must have been in a southern country for a long time. Your face looks like you've suffered a great deal and seen a lot of horrible things. In which hot country can an army doctor currently see horrible things? In Afghanistan, he concluded. It sounded simple enough. Holmes looked out of the window. A man with a large blue package walked down the street, looking carefully at the numbers. He used to be a Marine officer, said Holmes. I didn't believe him, since the man wasn't wearing any uniform. In any case, Holmes couldn't possibly prove his guess. In a minute, however, the man knocked on our door. He handed Holmes the package. May I ask you, sir, what is your profession? I said. I'm a retired Marine officer, sir. My uniform is in repair now, was his reply. 3. The package contained a letter from Gregson, a Scotland Yard detective. He needed help with a case involving the death of an American named Enoch Drebber. In Holmes's opinion, Gregson and his colleague Lestrade were the best detectives in Scotland Yard. However, even they lacked imagination. The case sounded interesting, and I persuaded Holmes to take it. We headed to an empty house in Brixton where the man's body had been found. The dead man lay in the dining room in an odd, uncomfortable position. An expression of horror was frozen on his face. There was blood everywhere, but no cuts on the body. Holmes bent down to examine the dead man, smelled his lips, then said, "You can take him away." Just as Gregson and 4 other men lifted the body, a wedding ring fell on the floor. "It's a woman's ring!" cried Lestrade, picking it up. "There must have been a woman here." "What did you find in his pockets?" asked Holmes. "A gold chain, a watch, some money, and 2 letters. One for E.J. Drebber, another for Joseph Stangerson," replied Gregson. "Both letters are from the same American boat company in Cleveland. I sent a telegram there, requesting information about this other man, but so far I know nothing." Meanwhile, Lestrade was investigating the walls. Suddenly he asked us to look at something. In one corner of the room, there was a word written in blood. Rach. "I suppose the murderer wanted to write the name Rachel," guessed Lestrade. "But then someone frightened him, and he left the scene." "Mr. Holmes, why are you laughing?" "I apologize," said Holmes. "You have found a very important clue." He started to examine the room, measure everything that came into sight, and take samples, saying something under his breath as he went. Finally, he got up and announced, "The murderer was a man, a very tall one, but with small feet. He wore shoes with a square toe. He came here with the victim in a cab. His face is rather red, and the nails on his right hand are unusually long. These are little things, but they might help you." Lestrade and Gregson exchanged confused looks. They didn't seem convinced. "If it was a murder, how was it done?" asked Gregson. "Poison," said Holmes. "Also, Rocky is German for revenge. I don't think a woman named Rachel was involved in the case." We left the scene and headed to the telegraph office, where Holmes sent a long message. Then we decided to visit John Rance, the police officer who had discovered the body. On our way, I kept questioning Holmes about how he had managed to learn so many details about the murder. Well, last night it rained for the first time this week, and there were 2 lines from cab wheels next to the house, he began. The lines were deep, so they must have been left after the rain had started by the cab that had brought the 2 people here. This sounds easy, I agreed. But what about the man's appearance? First of all, a person's height can be guessed from the length of their step. I measured the space between the footprints in the dust and in the mud. Also, if people write on vertical surfaces, they usually do it at the level of their eyes. When I saw the bloody word, I knew my guess was correct, said Holmes confidently. As for his fingernails, there were tiny scratches on the wall where the word was written. Makes sense. And the color of his face? It was just a suggestion, replied Holmes, though I have no doubt that it was right. I'm confused, I admitted. What about the German word? Was the murderer German? I think it's a false clue, suggested Holmes. The murderer wanted to confuse the police and make them think the case was in some way related to German socialists, which is unlikely. At that point, we arrived at John Rance's place. 4. We asked the police officer about the day he had discovered the dead man. John Rance was walking past the unlucky house when he noticed a light in the window. The house had stood empty for a long time, so he went in to investigate. That was how he found the body. He then called for other officers. There was nobody at the scene except a drunk man. When we left, Holmes told me, the murderer probably returned to the scene to take something he had lost. He saw Rance and pretended to be drunk. I think he was looking for the ring. We can use it to attract his attention. So we placed an advertisement in a newspaper about the ring. The following morning, the Brixton mystery was in every newspaper. From one of the articles, we learned that Joseph Stangerson was Enoch Drebber's secretary. They had been traveling together and stopped at Madame Charpentier's hotel. Suddenly, several homeless boys appeared in the apartment. Holmes talked to them, then shook his head. Keep searching, he said, giving them some money. He then explained to me that he used the boys as agents. They helped him gather information. The following day, an old lady came to our apartment to claim the ring. She said it was her daughter's. I gave her the ring, and she left in a hurry, noting many times that she was most grateful to us. Holmes went downstairs to watch her ride off in a cab. Soon he came back, and I clearly saw that he was disappointed. "We're so silly," he cried. "That person was none other than the murderer himself dressed up as a woman. Or alternatively, it was one of his friends." We had plenty of visitors that day. Gregson was next. He announced that he had arrested the murderer. It was Madame Charpentier's son. He wanted to take his revenge on Drebber, because once the man had gotten drunk and flirted with Madame Charpentier's daughter, explained Gregson. However, very soon his theory was proved to be false. Lestrade came to our apartment pale as a ghost. His clothes, usually neat and tidy, were a mess. "Did you talk to Mr. Stangerson?" asked Gregson excitedly. "Mr. Stangerson was murdered in his hotel room about 6 o'clock this morning," stated Lestrade. "Stangerson too," said Holmes thoughtfully. "The case is getting more complex." "I was certain that the secretary was involved in Drebber's death," began Lestrade.
Stay with us for part 2.
Share this video with a friend who is learning English. We have a lot of awesome videos like this. Check this one out.